Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome back. Today's episode, we will be discussing Pluto in Aquarius and these transits in my birth chart. This might seem super specific to me, but I will say a couple of things. One, if you end up having any affecting of your birth chart by this Pluto and Aquarius transit, which will last over the next 19 years, I hope that it serves and it illuminates some of the process that you might go through. But second, I really believe that so much of the lesson is really about transformation and what that process looks like. And it consistently looks very similar. And so I'm hoping that if you're going through any of your own transformation, that this allows you to be supported. I'm Jamie Ehrenberg with Idlewild Retreats, and this is my journey of following my intuition and becoming my truest self. I'm going to break this episode up into 4 parts. The first, I'm going to give you the dates for the first 2 segments of time that I'll talk about in this video. I'll come back to that too. I am going to break this episode up into 4 different parts. The first will be talking about how this transit affects my personal chart, and I'll show you a picture of my chart on the screen as well. I'll talk about the 2 date frames, date ranges that we'll be talking about, and then illuminate both of these in my own life, and again, intending that this will mirror experiences that you have or will have as well. My chart at 1 degree Aquarius in my natal birth chart, which you're going to see right here, I have my sun and my Venus, so my identity and my values. I have that at 1 degree Leo, so opposite that in the chart. I have my Mars, so my action and really my masculine action and wanting to be seen. And 1 degree Taurus, I have my Chiron, which is really significant in terms of your wounds that you're supposed to be living with, addressing in this lifetime. So that's a square. So I have major aspects in my chart all at exactly 1 degree of these signs, which cause a conjunction. That's the Sun and the Venus with Pluto on top of it, an opposition with the Mars, and then the square with my Chiron. All of that said, this is death for rebirth. I talked about that in the last video, and hopefully you already watched it to get a sense of what Pluto and Aquarius is all about on the light level. Transformation, it's going into the underworld, and think about that. Your values, your identity and self-concept with your sun, and then your values is the Venus. Your Mars is your being willing to be seen and your action, and then your biggest wounds, your karmic wounds, all being played with simultaneously. And that's for sure what I experienced while I've been experiencing these transits so far. While I'm recording this, we are at 1 degree Pluto and Aquarius retrograde, and I'll point out that I have Pluto retrograde in my chart. So anytime, if you have a retrograde of a planet in your chart, the times that they're in retrograde is not like for everyone else. It actually means it's go time versus review time. So it's kind of flipped around, and I think that's important, and we don't talk about that enough. So for me, these retrograde periods are the ones that really end up moving me forward versus putting me in revise, review, revisit phase. March 23rd, 2023, Pluto moved into 0 degrees Aquarius. And this is not an exact conjunction and outer planets. You're usually looking at the exact conjunctions that are the most important or significant for you. But I, on that day, was in a ceremony with one of my favorite astrologers, Virginia Rosenberg, and it was all about this move from Pluto into Aquarius. And Virginia does a lot of embodied work, somatic work in her astrology, and we sat and just connected with Pluto. And I could feel the weight. I could feel this density, and yet it was grounded. It wasn't erratic or anything like that. It was just this density, like this is here. I'm here. And I had no idea what I was in for. To be honest, at that time, I did not know how significant this transit was going to be in my own personal chart. It wasn't until about a year later I finally understood it. And so a lot of this is retrospectively looking at how that impacted me and how, with all of those 4 planets on my chart. So with this, I was sitting in ceremony and just really connecting in with Pluto. And I think within a few days, I got my call. And I've talked about the call before, but often that is what it's called when we're being called to walk and serve in a spiritual path. And I have to say, and I know I've also spoken about this, but I was not ready to hear it. I was not ready to hear it. And this is often how transformation goes, where we get this information, our intuitive body takes it in, hears it, knows it, sees it, feels it. We take it in, and it's telling us something. And to be honest, especially when it comes to transformation and change, which I've done again and again and again in my lifetime, we never want to hear it. Our minds, our egos, don't want to hear it. They're like, we're comfortable here. We're comfortable here. We don't need this. And what's wrong with this? And for me personally, when I received that call, I was like, well, what are we doing here? What is this? I am in a career that I love. That's been my lifelong career, and I've been so passionate about it. I have 3 or 4 more years of service before we move to Tennessee, and then I figure out what that looks like for me. And I was not ready to hear it. And so I got that little ping pretty much right away. And just like it normally does to me, something comes in and I just have to work with it. It's almost like a cat needing like a pillow, and I can't take it all in at once. Most of us can't, but I just do these like processes and just think about it and let it settle and let it integrate. And if this is all sounding like you as well, so that transformation and change, as well as the moving into being something else, it requires all of this of all of us. And I'm hearing a lot of beautiful women in my network talking about this right now too. So it was this is what I want you to do. I want you to serve others in community to support their spiritual path. You have been doing this work for so long. It is time for you to step up and help others. Okay. I had this vision, my husband and I had a vision of a retreat / health and wellness center at Idlewild, but I did not actually know what I was going to do there. I was just, I could have done back end. I didn't necessarily have to be front end. Actually, I didn't even think that I would be, and I already was thinking about who else might come in and do this with me. And lo and behold, as the process started unfolding, I had, months of specifically thinking about that retreat center, and that was fine. It was how this was starting to work through me, and I developed a really beautiful vision for that, and it felt aligned, it felt on purpose, and yet it wasn't really hitting all of the things that I needed to in order to really step into that path. So that first transit was March 23rd to May 1st, 2023 is the first time we got our little taste at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So at that point, it moved back retrograde, went back into Capricorn, Pluto did, and we didn't see it come back into Aquarius for quite a while. I think it was almost a year. And the second time it came in, and thanks for letting me look at my notes, was February 21st of 2024, and it lasts that 1 degree is Aquarius, and I keep talking about that specifically because of my chart, to April 11th, 2024. This time was so different. During the retrograde period where Pluto was moving back into Capricorn, I started developing our website. I took a class for creating newsletters. I had a plan for when I was going to start actually populating the website and the newsletters. And at the same time, I was getting really burnt out at work, kind of all of a sudden, and it now makes a lot of sense to me, because when we're pushing away things that are for us or that are trying to come in, we're wasting so much energy. And so that often, and I talked about this in the intuition film too, it ends up being that we're like just tiring our whole system out by pushing something away and not allowing it in. And I started to experience that. I ended up taking a sabbatical at work and was at that time given the space and had the space to think about what was next. I spent a lot of time on our land in Idlewild, and it became clear that I really needed to step into this path, and it was just pushing it away otherwise or delaying it. And we can always do that. We can always delay it, and it'll probably keep knocking at our door and trying to nudge us to make the change. I also, at that time, knew that right when Aquarius, we were back at 0 degrees Aquarius, I knew that I wanted to start my newsletter in January. I wanted to start hosting circles in January, women's circles. And I also wanted to kick this all off in the solstice, the winter solstice here in the Northern Hemisphere, by having my first soft circle and invited people to participate. So fast forward to February 21st, 2024. At this time, I was really starting what is Idlewild Retreats. I was starting that. I had already been in almost 3 months of service through that, in that way. And I also had to have the conversation. I was feeling such that tug, that rub, that misalignment, that the burnout was showing me. And I had to talk to my organization. I had to talk to the CEO and have the conversation about, this is a change that I need to make, and this is a change that is going to be ultimately the best for both of us. But I didn't even know what that looked like. And I ended up staying, so I had that conversation right as 1 degree Aquarius happened. Pluto moved back to that degree. And we made a plan for my transition out of this work, knowing that I didn't know what that was going to look like. We made a plan to hire my replacement. We didn't know how long it was going to take. We didn't know if I was going to have any role left at the organization. And it was just something I had to roll with. So during that period, all of that started taking forward movement, and it was slow. I didn't leave until November, the end of November, so it was a very slow process. But simultaneously, I was having a death and a rebirth. My first career was dying. This career I loved, that I had poured so much of my passion and my energy into, and I'm so proud of my first career. It was dying, and there was grief. So I would just name that. And I did so much embodiment work to support myself while I was going through that transition myself. And then simultaneously, Idlewild Retreats was establishing itself with monthly women's circles. Our first 1-day retreat, we had a first embodiment workshop. So things that were really starting to lead to what would eventually be the structure for Idlewild Retreat started to happen. And it was beautiful and organic and not too fast, and it was really, really developed along the way. The embodiment workshop, and it is the basis for what we do in Attune. So if that's anything that's resonating with you. Yeah, and these 2 phases of this transit is really this awakening and then a threshold. All the change hadn't happened yet, but the call, the spiritual awakening, the knowing, the request to step into a path happened. And then in the second act, we saw this stepping onto a threshold, starting to lean forward, but still having my feet on the ground that I knew, and about to really have one of those Fool type moments, like the tarot card Fool, of starting over, knowing that it's so right and not knowing what was going to be coming next, which I believe is so true of transformation. When we listen to what we're being asked to do, we often don't know. It's one step at a time. The path isn't clear. In reality, the path could probably be a lot of different things, but the saying yes, the listening to your soul, to the divine, listening to your higher self, all of what is trying to flow through you so that you can become more of who you're supposed to be in this lifetime, that's saying yes to transformation. And it's a beautiful cycle that we all experience. And like I said, usually it's multiple times. And every time, it doesn't feel comfortable at the beginning. It doesn't feel like we know where we're going, and we don't. And that's okay. As this is the beauty of living soul-led, of becoming and being our truest selves. The truest self is always developing. I would love to know below if you have your natal birth chart, if you have any planets. We can just go easy enough in the house that Aquarius is in to see if you are going to have a direct conjunction during this 19-year transit. If you've already had an experience with Pluto and Aquarius in your specific birth chart, I'd love to hear that too. And certainly all of us are experiencing this on the collective level, so it is shifting society as we know it. AI, technology, all of this growth, as well as the human mirror of that, are expanded consciousness, are moving into the 4D or the 5D, depending on what your frame of reference is. Our expansion, our evolution in consciousness, it's all happening in this Pluto and Aquarius time. So we're all experiencing it. And I would also love to know if you are experiencing any transformations in your life and you want to name it and be witnessed. It's one of my favorite things to do, is to just be able to witness people share when there is something that wants to come out and needs to be seen. I am sending you so much love, and I will see you on the next episode where we'll dig into the next part of this transit series and what transformation looks like.